Well, let's get you some perspective on what seems like a rather historic state visit. We're joined now live in our London studios by Onyekachi Wambu. He is the Director for Engagement and Policy at the Africa Foundation for Development. Mr. Wambu, welcome to Africa Live. Thank you so much for your time. Now, President Xi Jinping's visit to the UK is done and dusted, and it's being hailed as quite a success. What's your take on the visit?
I think it's been a huge success. A lot of talk about golden eras and new relationships between the UK and China. A lot of deals got done, about $62 billion worth, £40 billion in a whole number of sectors. So there's been really a lot to commend on the deal. There's obviously been some discussions here about China's human rights amongst certain factions. But I think on both sides of the government, there is really a big appetite for a strategic partnership or a win-win, as the president said.
Well, you talk about what some are touting as the start of a golden era between China and the UK. To what extent do you think this change in policy and engagement between the two countries is set to benefit Africa?
I think Africa and China have had a long-standing relationship since 2000 within the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCAC framework. There's been deepened engagement. And I think if Africa is going to benefit from the new partnership between the UK and China, it would have to benefit within that framework. I don't think it has to extend the work that has been there on infrastructure development, the things that have worked within that partnership, the emphasis on non-interference, and in the affairs of individual countries, the emphasis on infrastructure building, on investment, and I think it needs to work within that framework. The relationship with the UK and the West has been long-standing and goes back to the colonial period. There's been a lot of baggage there, and the new relationship with China didn't necessarily have that baggage. And what we wouldn't want is that as China and the UK get closer, some of that old baggage comes into the relationship with Africa.
Well, as you say there, Africa in the middle between an old friend and a new friend. And from that perspective, which countries specifically do you think are best positioned to benefit from closer ties between the UK and China?
I think it would need to be those countries where the UK are heavily invested already within the old Anglophone framework, the Nigerias, the South Africas, and I can see that the bilateral relations between China and those countries may benefit from some other tie-up or some other coordination with the UK. In terms of the UK spends a lot of money on development aid in Africa and in some of the poorer countries across the continent, and it would make sense that there should be some coordination, I guess, between a big aid donor like the UK and an increasing an important aid donor like China, over making sure that the aid that they both give is joined up, and there is some element of having greater impact. But I think that coordination, and again I stress this, needs to work within the framework that China is already working with the continent, which is the FOCAC framework and the individual bilateral relations that it has. But I also believe that in the long run, for Africa to really benefit from China, it needs to be integrated much more effectively into the new the One Belt, One Road framework, and particularly the new maritime Silk Road the new maritime Silk Road that is being constructed, and the new Silk Road.
Right, Onyekachi Wambu, thank you very much for that analysis. Joining us there from London.